and welcome to the Platinum Group Interview Series. I'm Dale Kirshner. Today, we're talking with Bill English, a Platinum Group partner specializing in conflict resolution, leadership assessment, and development, and serving as an interim CEO, such as he's doing today with the in-home healthcare company, Akron Home Care. Bill also is a licensed psychologist, an adjunct professor, and a successful entrepreneur who started a software training company in his basement and grew it to $9 million in revenue and 65 employees. Bill, in general, over the years, you've seen a lot of things, you've done a lot of things. What are your thoughts in terms of what business owners should be doing right now to not only deal with COVID-19, but to deal with this economy?
Well, two things. First of all, they need to focus on employee and customer safety. So whatever they got to do to make things safe is what they need to do, not just from a basic human rights respect standpoint, but from a liability standpoint too. The number of workplace lawsuits that are being filed by employees against employers for lack of protection from the COVID virus is continuing to increase. So that's one thing they should do. I think the other thing, though, is this is a ripe opportunity to get all the change you want as a CEO. This is a ripe opportunity to get vendor change, customer change. Maybe there's some customers you want to get rid of. Maybe there's some key leadership that just isn't working out very well and you'd like to transition them. All the change that you want to make, now's the time to do it, because you can blame everything on COVID. You can blame everything on the economy. You can blame everything. And it's just a good time to get change. So, and people are accepting change a lot more right now. So
that's a really good point. I hadn't really thought of the house cleaning aspect to all this. And it's you covered a lot of bases there in terms of things that you can clean or that you can change out. And let's back up just a little bit about the legal liability side of things. We've heard that Congress may or may not pass something that would protect people from the liability standpoint, but what have you been seeing out there in terms of these increased cases that are being filed by employees, and what are they saying? Are they saying that we didn't have masks or we didn't have the right kinds of personal protection equipment and then we got sick?
Yeah, it depends on the industry. If they're in the medical industry, they're mad and they're suing that they didn't have proper PPE, personal protective equipment. If they're in other industries, honestly, I think some of them are suing just to see if they can get some money out of the employer. But I get this information from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Litigation Center. Every week they publish a COVID roundup, and it is a really good read to go through all the types of litigation that are happening. And really all they're saying in that roundup is that the number of employee-based cases that are being filed against employers is steadily increasing. Case law is going to end up determining what we should have done and should have foreseen months ago. And that's a part that scares me a little bit, quite frankly. What is an enterprising lawyer or judge going to come up with next summer, in summer of 2021 or summer of 2022, and says, back in the summer of 2020, you should have been doing this, and we weren't even thinking about it, or we were peripherally thinking about it, or we weren't able to do it because we didn't have proper PPE or whatever. So I think those are, these things are going to wind their way through the court, but that's something that business owners have got to be very aware of.
So how are you navigating that, both as a CEO, but also when it comes to talking with your clients? What are you saying about, how do you still move forward without being paranoid?
Yeah, that's a great question. You move forward by doing what you can and trusting that the courts will be understanding when you are not able to do what you couldn't. And, we're going to look back on this in 2 years and have a much more clearer picture of how we should have handled this at the leadership level of corporations. So there's a little bit, if I can borrow the phrase, there's a little bit fog of war here going on right now. And I'm hoping that the courts are not too hard on businesses because, I think most business owners, including myself, are doing the best we can.
How important is communications in all this? I mean, sometimes people want
Yeah.
to communicate and communicate as much as possible and be really transparent. But when you think about, can it be held against you 6 months to 12 months from now if you said something or you didn't say something? How does that affect how you're communicating right now?
Yeah, we've actually built a communication strategy where we are routinely emphasizing to our employees to follow CDC guidance. Now, look, Accurate Home Care, it has 800 employees. Only 60 of them work here in the home office. The rest of them are care providers who work in the homes of our patients. So our patients don't come here. We're not a clinic. And our patients go from their home to the patient's home and then back to their home. So they don't even come here. So the way that we try to reinforce what they need to do is just to continuously send emails. So if they say, we weren't advised, for example, to follow CDC guidance often enough, if that's one of the complaints in a lawsuit, I'll be able to say, well, we have record here that we sent you the same email 22 times telling you to follow CDC guidance. And we're hoping that something like that is actually a risk mitigation effort.
Mhm. You talked about house cleaning and some of the different things that can be changed. Uh, you know, from an employment standpoint, that's kind of interesting when we look at the humanity side of it, of not wanting to have to let somebody go when we have an economy like we do and the unemployment rate that we do. So what do you do when you find somebody that needs to be moved out or needs to improve? How much time do you give them to improve, and how do you work on that?
For me, first of all, the unemployment is really only affecting or coming from certain sectors. It's not broad based, at least right now in June of 2020, in my estimation. So we're handling those employee issues the same as we always would. And we're not saying, oh, the economy's not good, so maybe we should hold on to them. That's not a good way to run a business. But what we are finding is that there's some really good talent out there right now that is looking for work as well, at least in our sector. And so we're doing better at hiring, but we haven't changed our coaching or termination practices at all because of the economy.
How about vendor relations? Anything new on that front?
Vendor relations, the one new vendor that we have, and this is another risk mitigation piece for COVID, we bring in a professional company to totally sanitize our office every 2 weeks. And it's I don't know, $3,500 a month or something like that. It's just not a lot of money. But that's another thing that we're going to be able to use to say, look, we did that to a judge or in our defense in order to say we were trying to protect our employees. The other thing I've mandated is that starting on Monday, you're only allowed to work in the office 50% of the time. We have some activities here in our office that are absolutely you have to be here and absolutely you have to collaborate with other people. But there's other positions where they can work from home pretty readily. And so we implemented that 50% times. But in terms of vendors, we haven't made a big change in vendors.
Okay. Labor market wise,
Yeah,
nurses are critically important for your business. That's pretty much what you
yeah,
do in terms of who's in those homes. Uh,
yeah.
what are you seeing out there with that? We've seen nurses furloughed and some laid off from some of the hospitals earlier on in COVID-19, but they've been hired back now. And do you still face a nurse shortage, or kind of
Oh
what's that?
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, and the nurses that were furloughed at the right time because they had that extra $600 a week that they could get, and you kind of calculate out what they were getting through unemployment. I think it averaged around 44 or 45,000 a year prorated. So those furloughed nurses weren't interested. We did implement a welcome bonus of $3,000 that would be paid over 2 years, given certain hurdles and hoops that were jumped through and stuff. That didn't work at all to get furloughed nurses in the door with us. But we are on track to be. We have, how do I say this? We have finally hit on a formula in the last 2 months that we think is going to bring us 10 to 15 net new nurses a week. And given that we are about 5,000 hours behind and an average nurse works only about 15, 18 hours a week, you can see that we need probably a good 100 nurses. So we think we've hit on that formula.
Can you
But
share
COVID,
details of that formula at all, or
no,
is it a
and
trade?
no, because other home care companies will do the same thing then.
Okay, sorry. I think
It's
I
one of my
interrupted you.
competitive advantages.
Yeah. What were you going to say though before I interrupted you?
Oh, I have no idea.
Um, I think too, I was curious about before COVID hit, we had record low unemployment, and keeping talent was really an issue. Do you still see retention as pretty much the same issue as it was before? Or with approximately 44 million people out of work right now, and you mentioned that there was a lot of good talent looking for opportunities right now. How have things changed from a recruitment and a retention standpoint?
Yeah, for non-nursing positions, we're finding that, or non-care provider positions, because we do PCAs and homemakers and home health and all that. For non-care provider positions, we're finding that there's an ample supply of really top talent, and we're making the conscious decision to pay a little bit more than what the market is to get them in the door here, because we want them here. As you know, Dale, we're on a very significant growth trajectory, and we expect to grow double accurate home care in size in the next 5 years. We're not going to do that without top talent. We're just not. And so we take our time, we interview well, we're learning how to interview better, and we interview well, and then we make offers that they go, wow, yeah, I'd like that. The other thing though that we're having to do is to come around, Dale. It's not just about the base salary, because as you know, this is a turnaround. And I've been here 2.5 years, and we just were starting to hit profitability in January of this year. We're going to be implementing a number of, I'll just say, elements like a 401k match and other things that are going to increase the employee value proposition, so that not only do they come to a company with a great culture, they come to a company with a great EVP. And that, I think, is our retention, is our culture and the great EVP. And then look at job enlargement, job enhancement, and other things to help them. About every 12 to 18 months, we got to give them something new, maybe a little bonus and pay or something new, in order to keep them interested and keep them going here.
Congrats on finally being able to do that too. I mean, as a turnaround, you want to do more from an employer value proposition perspective, but you can't because you don't have the dollars. So congrats on being to that point now where you can do that.
Thank you. Thanks. It's been a
Switching,
long haul.
yeah. Switching gears in terms of clients, other clients that you have worked with over the years or are working on today, any tips for them in terms of what they should be doing beyond what we already talked about? Maybe.
Other clients, you mean other platinum clients?
Yep.
That I'm working with that isn't accurate home care.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. For them, I'm one other thing I'm asking them, not asking, but I'm suggesting that they do is take a look at how they define who gets on the benefits roll. You may be a company where you're only operating at 50% capacity, and that capacity doesn't allow most of your employees to participate in your benefits. So you need to kind of run a cash flow analysis of your benefits costs, and whether you at 50% capacity, whether you can afford to lower some of the benefit thresholds for a while to make sure that those employees are taken care of. If not, they may find full-time elsewhere. Now you may say, well, but if you're part-time here, how could you be full-time there? Well, by changing industries, right?
Mm-hmm.
By going into an industry that's full-time, it's always going to be full-time, and it's never not going to be full-time. And, so people can do that. I've also suggested to some friends who are facing difficult times that maybe you should start your own business. Maybe now's a good time to get out there and start a business. There's no time like the present, right? And a couple of them, we've had conversations about, well, what would I do? How would I do this? And I remember I read a stat somewhere, Dale, one time where they followed a bunch of people who were laid off in their 50s from corporate America, the Fortune 500s. And they found that over a third of them started businesses within a year of being laid off, being fired. I thought that was interesting.
There's any follow-up stat on how many of them stayed in business?
I think it was the normal stat,
Okay.
5 years, 50%, 10 years, 90%
Well,
fails. So
yeah, that's still good. I
yeah,
think it's, is it still the old adage that you start with the need? If you're going to start a business, you first of all figure out what the need is out there.
yeah, you got to figure out a need, and then you got to figure out if you're competent enough to meet that need.
Hmm.
So it takes both sides, right? You got to have the need, then you got to have the competence, and then you got to do both at a price point that people are willing to pay for.
Yep.
Yeah.
What do you think about this economy too, Bill? Some people are saying that there's a tsunami coming and that we've just had this, we had the earthquake, but now there's this big force coming at us as the stimulus funding kind of dwindles and people are not brought back as fast as people think. Other people are thinking the recovery is going to happen pretty quickly and that by January, it's going to be quite nice compared with how it is today. What's your thinking on all this?
I have maybe some conflicting thoughts that I'm not fully worked out in my brain. One is that the fundamentals of our economy were really very good before COVID hit. And there's a lot there to rely on to come back to it. Secondly, I think the government is going to keep the money flowing through the election. It's after the election when I think December, January, the government's going to say, okay, we want our money back. And that's when I think we're going to have a tsunami of bankruptcies. And we're also going to have a tsunami, and we're going to continue to see this tsunami of lawsuits. Lawyers are going to get rich. They always do, right? Lawyers are going to get rich, but I think there's a tsunami of bankruptcies coming. And if you're in private equity, there's going to be some good deals to pick up for pennies on the dollar to add to your portfolio. If you're going through the bankruptcy, it's absolutely no fun, but that's why you call Platinum, honestly. We're a turnaround firm. We're a workout firm. You don't have to pay the big dollars to go through a bankruptcy. We can help you with that and do it informally for much less money. And chances are, I don't know what the chances are, but I'm going to say chances are we probably can help you turn your company around, even if you feel like it's well past where it can survive and live. Believe me, when we got here to Accurate Home Care, after about a month, we were scratching our heads going, what did we get ourselves into? But we're still here. And this is what Platinum does, Dale, you know that. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not only the resources of you and everybody else at Platinum, but it's your connections. And while a business is in trouble, you know other people who can come in with other components, whether it's funding or whether it's something that's merged into it or some other aspect that helps that business. I think that's a really good point. The other thing is working things out before filing for Chapter 11. The costs involved in a Chapter 11 are very expensive. And when you don't have much money to play with to begin with, I think what you just raised was a really good point of trying to work things out without having to file.
Yeah. When you look at everybody at Platinum, and I'm including you in this, Dale, when you look at everybody at Platinum, we have over 600 years of business experience. And one of the main reasons I wanted to be a Platinum was because I wanted to be around some really crazy, smart, highly talented, well-experienced guys and gals. And I'm just tickled pink to be a Platinum and to be rubbing shoulders with guys like Dean Batchelor and Bob Stewart and Pat Brennan and Steve Coleman and others. It's just a stitch. And every day is like a learning experience. And you learn a lot about business. But I tell you what, there's a lot of good we can do for a lot of businesses at critical junctures at Platinum. And I would encourage people to give us a call.
Yep, absolutely. And we're pretty much out of time. What was a question I should have asked you that I didn't ask?
I can't say that one. I guess I can't think of one. I'm sorry, Dale. What I was thinking was of Bill Cosby when I was growing up. He had this routine that says, "Why is there air?" But don't ask that question.
So, well, on that note, we'll wrap it up. But Bill, thank you very much for sharing your experience and some perspectives with us today.
You're welcome.
And I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to this Platinum Group interview podcast. If you have any questions you'd like to run by Bill or anyone else at the Platinum Group, give them a call at 952-829-5700. You can also find out more about Bill and the Platinum Group by going to theplatinumgrp.com. Thanks again for joining us today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.